Good morning and welcome to Brant Community Church. We're so glad to have you here, and if you're a guest, we're especially glad that you have joined us as our guest, and we hope you'll feel welcome. And if you're looking for a place to kind of connect in a church home, we hope that you might select BCC. Well, we're starting a series today called Left to Our Own Devices, and it's about technology. And nothing could be more ironic. God is in heaven laughing this morning, because we walked into a technological mess. Thank goodness for our team that was able to at least have sound and video up here and working on online. We wanted you to be able to sit in the cafe if you wanted to and watch the service. That didn't happen. Our kids were to be checked in electronically. That didn't happen. But you know what? That's okay. We are going to push our way through, because we are talking about technology, but not all technology. We're talking about those handheld devices like smartphones and tablets, but even more specifically, we're going to be talking about a smartphone and the use of them. Now, you might be here this morning and say, well, I don't have a smartphone, or I don't use social media, or I don't download apps, or I don't do any of that. What about me? And I just say, stay home for the next 4 weeks. Or you can join us and show up for 4 practical messages that have significant application in life, whether we use technology a lot or little or not at all. So I'm hoping you're going to stay with us. So let's start by asking a little survey. How many of you have some kind of a smartphone? Raise your hand. Okay, great. How many of you have it in your pocket or purse right now? How many of you have it in your hand right now? Come on, fess up, let's go. All right. How many of you have more than one smartphone or a smartphone and a tablet as well? Raise your hands. Yeah, I thought we would leave some people out, but I don't think we are. You see, if the stats are right, 95% of all of us have a smartphone. And some of us have both devices, a smartphone and a tablet. Well, Apple introduced the smartphone, the iPhone 1. Anybody still got one? Yeah, okay, just one. Oh, somebody way back there, okay. It was introduced in June 29th, 2007. That's just 12 years ago. It's amazing. And Steve Jobs, the president of Apple, said this. Oh, missing the slide there. Okay, well, let me tell you what he said. He said this. This is a powerful tool. This is the most powerful tool of social connection ever invented. Time magazine named it the most influential gadget of all time. In fact, they said this will fundamentally change our relationship with computing and access to information, a change that will likely have repercussions for decades, but nobody's sure what they are. I mean, you think about the benefits of a smartphone. All in one place, easy to use, easy to access. I made a list. Phone, calendar, camera, email, social media, state-of-the-art apps, workout, your workplace, reading, credit cards, maps, news, weather, shopping, GPS, alarms, and much more, especially if you use a bunch of apps. All contained in this one single device. There is more technology in this device than was in the entire space capsule that landed on the moon. I mean, that's amazing. That was just 1969. And there are so many positive benefits to having a smartphone. They are. The smartphone is not a bad thing. It's not created by the devil. It's simply a device. But just as there are benefits, there are downsides as well. And probably the biggest downside of smartphone technology today is the amount of time that we spend on it. So, the average person checks their phone. How often do you think? Lots. Some of you are going, lots. Here it is. 4.3 minutes, every 4.3 minutes on average, someone checks their smartphone. If you've got your phone in your hand, that means you will check it at least 8 times while I'm speaking. But it gets worse. That's 81,500 times per year. And if you spent, on average, 15 seconds, just 15 seconds for every time you check your phone, that's 340 hours or 14.2 days. Just checking the thing. And then we could talk about social media. The average person on social media, here's what it is. Spend 6 hours per week. 6 hours per week. It goes on. That's 312 hours per year. That's 23,400 hours or 970 days if you started when you were 15 and you stopped when you were 85. 975 days. That's 3 years out of your life. And I just imagine, I'm going to stand before God one day and he's going to read this verse. Be careful then how you live, not as unwise but as wise, making the most of every opportunity. He's going to say, how did you do? And I said, pretty good except for those 975 days. I was pretty good the rest of the time. And how am I going to rationalize and justify that kind of time? The same way I justify and rationalize it every day of my life. In North America, we have an excessive use of device problem. I think if we are honest, we would admit it. That's why the most profitable and influential organizations and companies spend gazillions amount of time and dollars creating apps and creating ads in order to capture our attention so that we'll buy their product or join their organization. Left to our own devices, it's a big problem. How many of you would be willing here today to admit, don't raise your hands, that you have an excess of use of device problem? Right? It's interfering sometimes with daily life, interfering with work or relationships or school, time spent reading, reflecting, time spent alone with God. In a recent survey, 38% of the general population admitted to excessive device use, that they had this compulsion with screens and the amount of time spent on it. But it's not just the time. What about the money that's spent on gambling and shopping? What about the content that we download that can be destructive to our minds? What about others who are bullied and belittled? What about the predators and scam artists? What about online dating and electronic chat rooms? What about all of that? But it's a mental health issue as well. In fact, researchers have discovered that those who are prone to having lower dopamine and serotonin levels, more prone to anxiety and depression, excessive phone use actually lowers those levels even further, leading to loneliness, depression, and anxiety. In fact, there's a research study going on right now to see if the increase in the use of technology is directly related to the increase in mental illness. Because what happens is this technology affects our prefrontal cortex of our brain. That's where memory is stored. That's where the ability to pay attention is located. That's where priorities are set and planning is located. There is verifiable research on all of this. Trust me or check your phone. But I think all of us know this to be true. This has become the drug of choice for so many people of all ages because it gives instant accessibility. You are totally in control of who you speak to or who you connect with or what you post. You get instant feedback and gratification, and it creates all sorts of excitement. So many of us, I include myself big time, suffer from a condition called nomophobia. That's the fear of leaving your phone somewhere, not having it with you. You know, Dad goes to the shopping center with his 5-year-old son, and the son wanders off, and Dad puts his phone down, starts going after the son, and realizes he doesn't have his phone, and he's in a dilemma which one he should search for first. That's nomophobia. Technology is everywhere. It's not just in our pockets and in our purses and on our person. I have multiple screens at home. I have an iPhone, iPad, MacBook Pro. I'm an Apple guy. 2 TVs, Apple, and all of those kind of things. I mean, it's hard to avoid screens. You ever wonder why? Do you ever wonder why we've got so hooked on technology? Well, I think part of it's FOMO, the fear of missing out, that somehow we're going to miss out, and so we have to stay continually connected. Or maybe it's the idea of the building of your fragile ego when your self-worth is struggling. Or maybe it's the amusement and entertainment when we feel bored. Or maybe it's avoiding casual conversation instead of making eye contact. You know, used to get in the elevator. I was actually in an elevator, and I thought, I'm going to check this out. And everybody, you get on, and they'd look at the numbers, right? Not anymore. The phone, everybody's looking at the phone. It helps us avoid responsibility. We can escape some difficulties and hardships we're experiencing, all by the use of technology. It is a good thing, but it needs to be kept in its place. It is a tool designed for good, not a device that will lead to destruction. Christian author Andy Crouch says this: if we don't learn to put technology in all its forms in its proper place, we will miss out on many of the best and most important parts of our life. You see, in its proper place, technology is wonderful. It can help us bond better with real people that we have responsible to love. It can start great conversations. We can take care of our bodies that we inhabit. It helps us to acquire skills and to gain information. We can enjoy the beauty that God created on it. There's some really good benefits, but it's got to be kept in its proper place. And that's what we're going to talk about over the next 4 weeks. We're going to look at how this impacts our lives and the things that we should use it for good, but we need to make sure that the things that can be destructive are dealt with. And I'm going to promise you a couple of things. We're not going to talk about adopting an Amish lifestyle when it comes to the use of your phone. We're not going to separate or abstain from it. We're not going to deny that there are real benefits. But it is going to require us to make some choices. And as I look around our culture, many people are not making these choices. And I need this series as much as anybody. I got to be honest. Like, I'm a big social media person. I like it. I'm checking my phone. Those are probably my stats. I love technology. I love all the benefits of it. In fact, Sue said to me, I hope you're really listening to the messages these next 4 weeks. So, folks, I'm a fellow struggler. And I'm an old pastor guy, right? You think I shouldn't? Well, today we want to look at how our devices end up distracting us. Because I believe that distraction can be dangerous. Distraction can be dangerous. And so I just want to fire a video up, and this is a news interview in the U.S., but it just talks about the distraction. So let's watch.
Times have changed as technology has evolved.
Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook mostly.
Instead of just using a phone to make calls, there are all kinds of ways we glue our eyes to the screen these days. And we're doing it more and more.
How many times a day would you say you check your phone?
30 times.
8.
30 times?
Every 2 seconds.
Yes.
According to a new study by the American Psychological Association, excessive technology and social media has created the constant checker. On a 10-point scale where 10 is a great deal of stress, of those surveyed, the average level for constant checkers was 5.3, compared to 4.4 for those who don't check as often. For working Americans checking work email constantly on days off, their level was higher, at a 6.
Do you check work emails even on your days off?
Absolutely.
I am not like that before. It was just recently when like social media is like, you know, it's part of our job.
If you think it's stressful checking one phone, try checking 2, like I do.
Then there's the effect of technology on your relationships.
Do you find that it interferes with, family or friend time?
My wife might say yes. I don't think so.
I find that the kids can't communicate with one another. They don't know how to communicate anymore. I think a lot of their self-esteem is tied to the phone and what's going on.
But this woman sees frequent technology use another way.
I feel more connected to my kids, to family.
The APA says constant checking isn't good for mental or physical health. Your prescription? A digital detox. Alice Gaynor, CBS 2 News. Times have changed as technology has.
So here's another thing of distraction. It says recipe for black chicken. Wash the chicken, add spices and herbs, put it in the preheated oven, and go on Facebook. True? True? Here's another picture that's just a little bit more disturbing. That truth can be a reality as well. Here's where it becomes more and more dangerous. Here's where distraction really becomes dangerous. This is a statue. It's in Amsterdam. You know what the title of the statue is? Distraction. Distraction. And so that's what we want to talk about today, the distraction that our devices can create. And distraction is defined this way: the shifting of our attention from something of greater importance to something of lesser importance. That's what a distraction is. Our attention moves from something of greater importance to something of lesser importance. And those things of greater importance are our relationships, our relationship with God, our relationship with others, those face-to-face interactions that we have, our work, school, studying, other important things. Those are the things that are of greater importance to our attention. Those things that are of lesser importance are email, text, and social media. I mean, I know it is important for many of you to know what your friends had for lunch and what they're eating and where they're eating it and what they're wearing and what holidays they're taking. I know it's so important to look at all the conversations or political parties that people are criticizing, you know, the memes that use her for inspiration, or all those other important things. I know it's really important. I think it's easy for us to admit that distraction happens. I think it's very difficult for us to deal with that. And I think that we need to learn all about this idea of giving our attention to those things of greater importance at the expense of those of the lesser importance, or not giving into distraction, because distraction can be dangerous in so many ways. In so many ways. Now, maybe you say, well, I don't check my phone very often, so I'm not distracted. But maybe you're here and that's true, but you still get distracted. You get distracted by anxiety and worry and preoccupied with work, and your mind is drifting other places. And with or without your phone, distraction can happen to all of us. The Bible now, I want to surprise you with something, does not speak to technology and social media, in case you were wondering. But the Bible does talk about distraction. And I think there's a great story in Luke chapter 10 that deals with distraction. And I think we can apply it to any distraction, but especially the distraction with our devices. Here's the story. And Jesus and his disciples, they're on their way. It means that they're on their way to Jerusalem. And just outside of Jerusalem, in a place called Bethany, they come to that village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. So we have this older sister, Martha. She's older. That's why she's mentioned first. And she has a sister, Mary. And it says, Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. Now, I think the misunderstanding of this is people think that Jesus is sitting in a chair and she's sitting at his feet. That may be, but not necessarily. Because in the ancient Near East, when someone sat at someone else's feet and listened to what they said, it refers to that person as a disciple of a rabbi. And so it's really saying that Mary is this disciple of Jesus. She's not one of the 12, but she's a disciple. And she is in the room with the other disciples listening to what Jesus is saying. But it says, but Martha was distracted by all the preparations that she had to make. And this word distracted, in the original language the Bible was written in, is peripeo, and peri means in different direction, and peo means to be drawn. It's the idea to be drawn in different directions. In fact, in medieval France, they had a torture that they used. It was called draw and quarter. If you don't know what it is, they put a rope around both of your hands and a rope around both of your legs. So these 4 ropes then were attached to horses, and the horses were told to gallop. It was a terrible thing, but the French had a word for it. They called it distraction. To be torn in different directions. Here we have Martha. She has some very distinguished visitors. She is Jesus, whose reputation is growing. And she is distracted. And I love it. She comes to Jesus and says, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. In other words, hey, Jesus, don't you care that I'm distracted? Isn't that a bit of an overstatement? It's not Jesus' fault. It's she's busy. She's out of focus. And Jesus responds to her. And he does it in such a gentle way. That's why he mentions her name twice. Martha, Martha. You are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. And what he's saying is she's chosen the one thing to connect with me in a relationship. She's chosen to listen to what I have to say and to my teaching. That's the best thing, and that is not going to be taken away from her. Mary is not being distracted by a bad thing. She's just being distracted from the best thing. The best thing, being with Jesus. Let me ask you, are you distracted with your devices? Do you find that? Are you sure? You might say, no, not me. Well, I thought maybe a little quiz would help us to understand that. So you're going to give yourself 1 point for every right answer. So, do you take your device to the bathroom and use social media while on the go, so to speak? Do you sleep next to your phone? Do you check your phone first thing in the morning? Do you tweet or text at the dinner table? Have you ever texted under the table looking at someone but doing this so they don't see it? Do you ever go online longer than you originally intended? Do you lie to members of your family about your online use, and when they come into the room, you rush to put your phone down? Have your spouse or your kids told you to put the phone down and pay attention to them? Here's a bonus question. When you were asked to put your phone down, how many times have you said, just a second? Here's 2 points bonus. Well, on your phone, if someone asked you a question, you responded, huh? Here's the big one. Have people in your world considered having an intervention because of your cell phone use? I think I scored, well, other than the intervention one, I think I did pretty good, although they may be planning it and I don't know. You see, I think it starts by admitting that there is an issue, because it's easy to deny. It's easy to go into denial and say, I don't have a problem. And this is allowing the Holy Spirit to poke around in your conscience and nudge you to sense whether it's true or not. And if you start to feel that way, then it's time to admit it. That's what Jesus did to Martha. He kind of made her realize that there was an issue. This distraction was an issue. And the Holy Spirit may be doing that to us as well. I think that we just, we need to take this step. We really do. We need to come to the place where we admit this is a problem. It's the first step. I had to do this recently, a few months ago, to admit this has become a problem. And I realized that I can't deal with it until I'm willing to admit, yes, that is a problem. And that's a question you have to ask yourself and be real and honest this morning. Well, I want to talk about dealing with distraction. The first thing I want to say is dealing with distraction is about redefining our priorities. That's what Jesus did to Mary and Martha. He was all about priorities. What would you say are your key priorities? How would you know what something is a priority? Well, here's what your priorities are, whether you want them to be or not. Your priorities are whatever you give your focus to, your best time to, your attention to, and you allocate emotional energy most often. So what are they? Well, if you're not a Christ follower here this morning, you might say, well, family, friends, work, self-care. Most Christ followers would agree. As a Christ follower, though, our relationship with God would be on that list, and hopefully it would be at the top. The question is, if it's God and your family and your friends and your work and all of those more important priorities, you say, well, that's what mine are. Are they being lived out? Truth be told. Is it playing out in your life? Do people in your relation world have to continually ask for your attention? Would your family say that you're constantly distracted? Would they say that they feel not really like a priority? In a couple weeks, we're going to talk about the whole relational dynamic with social media and all of that. But right now, some of us need to say, you know what, when it comes to the people who I'm supposed to care for the most, who are supposed to be high on the priority list, including my relationship with God, I'm not doing good at that one. What about have your family and friends, honestly, have they said something to you? Mine have. And I'm talking about the face-to-face friends, not the million you have on Facebook that aren't really your friends. What about self-care, sleep, eating, exercise, relaxing, seeking a counselor, all those good things of self-care? Is that a priority? Are you spending enough time there? What about the one that comes right out of this story? Do you have this growing relationship with Jesus and the time you're spending is growing, or are you spending more and more time with your device? Be honest. When it comes to time alone with God, prayer, scripture reading, giving quiet reflection in solitude, does God get more of your focus, time, and energy, or does your device or something else? It says in Psalm 37:7, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Don't fret. Don't get all sort of out of sorts when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. In other words, he's saying, be still before the Lord and don't give in to other things that can distract you. Psalm 46:10, this is God speaking. He says, be still and know that I am God. And this word know here, it's not about an intellectual knowledge, it's more of an experiential knowledge. It's knowledge you get from connection and relationship and experience. It's knowing about God, and it's knowing God. It's knowing that God is always present. God is always with you. God loves you with an incredible love. He'll handle anything that you're going through. That he is all powerful, in charge, and in control, that all things will eventually work for good, that you're chosen, forgiven, and a recipient of unconditional grace. We need to continually remind ourselves, because sometimes life throws us big curveballs. Sometimes it comes crashing upon us. And we need to be reminded of these truths. We really do. But if you're going to be reminded that God is God, what do you have to do? Be still. You have to be still. God did not create you to be distracted from him, but he created you to be attracted to him. He really did. Distraction from God keeps us from experiencing his presence, listening to his voice and his nudging. Our attention and focus turn to what we think is most important. What are you turning to? Our device can divert our attention from what God is doing in our lives. It keeps us from communicating with God. It keeps us from connecting with God. Is your device getting in the way? You see, we have to deal with distraction. It's because of priorities, but dealing with distraction is all about finding our way to solitude. Solitude. That's what still means. Be still. Find your way to solitude, to quiet. The Hebrew word rapah means to relax, to forsake noise and distraction, to cease from striving. It's what Jesus said, come to me all who are burdened and I will give you rest. It's the same word. The word picture is a rope that is spun so tight and taut and tense, stretched to the limit, but now it becomes slack and the pressure is off. That's what it means to be still. It's the absence of things that distract us. And that stillness is only found in solitude. It's in solitude where we can move away from the past hurts. It's in solitude where we can step away from the anxiety and doubts and uncertainty of the present or the future. And it's in solitude that we get into the present. And when we're in the present, that's where God is present. God is not present in our past and not in our future. He will be when we get there. But right now, he is only present in our present, and solitude gets us to that place. What makes solitude so important is that our culture relentlessly wants to shape and mold you. Our culture hates silence. We're addicted to noise. There needs to be some stimulation of our senses all the time. Do you ever wonder, why do we hate silence? Why do we hate silence so much? Well, a mathematician and a theologian in the 17th century named Pascal wrote this: I have discovered that all the unhappiness of men arises from one single fact. They cannot stay quietly in their own chamber. Hence it comes that men so much love noise and stir. Hence it comes that the prison is so horrible a punishment. Hence it comes that the pleasure of solitude is a thing incomprehensible. To be without constant distraction is solitary confinement, a punishment to be most dreaded. Staring at the ceiling of our quiet rooms with only our thoughts about ourselves, the reality of God seems unbearable. I think he's right. And he wrote that like in the 17th century, before there was technology. But it's the idea of not wanting to be in solitude and not wanting to find our way to silence. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a pastor in Germany and actually put to death just before the emancipation of those in prison, said this: we seek noise to avoid ourselves. We race from activity to activity to avoid having to be alone with ourselves, even for a moment. We avoid having to look at ourselves in the mirror. And I think these guys are right. I think that it's fear that keeps us from solitude. I think our culture is afraid to get alone, afraid of their thoughts, afraid of what they might discover about themselves, afraid of thinking about their hurts and their wounds. But is this fear keeping us from an awareness of God that is only found in solitude? That's really where the awareness of God comes. We need to find our way to solitude, find time to be alone with God, with no distractions, no devices, and no noise. Some of you are already feeling withdrawal. It doesn't have to be hours and hours. Imagine if you just said, okay, I'm just going to say 15 minutes. I'm going to go to solitude for 15 minutes in my day. No phone, no distractions, no noise, no nothing. And I'm just going to get quiet, and I'm going to get quiet before God. And then when you do, you just say, God, do you have anything to say to me? Nudge my spirit. Do you have something to say to me from your word? Do you need to reveal something that's wrong within me? Do you need to just comfort me? God, what do I need from you? Please give it to me. It's really that Psalm 139 prayer. Imagine praying this in solitude. Search me, God. Know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me and lead me in the way of everlasting. Wouldn't that be an awesome prayer in solitude? And then quietly listen to what God wants to say. You see, solitude gives us the power to regulate, reflect, restore, and refocus. Noise doesn't. You know, the designers of social media platforms design them in such a way they get you hooked to scrolling. It's almost like a drug. That you need to feel good about yourself. You need to be doing it. You see, if we give in to the noise and give in to the devices too much, it removes those moments of solitude and rest that are necessary for happiness, peace, and a full life. But it's hard because I can hear it crying, saying, pick me up and check me. Pick me up and check me. Something important's on there. It's easier to scroll and tweet and post and like and share than to get quiet before God and let him speak. And let him speak. You see, it's in solitude that I find the wisdom and insights of God. It's in solitude that I find the awareness of God's presence. It's in solitude where I can pour out my heart to God and tell him how broken my heart really is. I do all those in solitude. You can't do it with noise and distraction. Jesus said this: the thief comes to steal and kill and destroy. He was talking, the thief in that context, he was talking about the whole idea of legalistic religion. I think if he was here today, I think he'd be talking more about our phones and our technology and social media. They come only to steal, kill, and destroy. Jesus says, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. That's what he wants for you. I mean, Jesus practiced this. It says in Mark 1:35, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went where? To a solitary place where he prayed. If Jesus needed to be in solitude with his Father and he was the Son of God, how much more do I need it? Significantly. Significantly. And the last thing about distraction is this. Dealing with distraction is about putting a simple plan in place. It's just a simple plan. Jesus talks about choice, right? Mary was making a choice and Martha was making a choice. And it's about putting a plan in place. It's about making a choice, committing to that plan, being willing to be held accountable to the plan. Most of us can make a plan, but if you're having issues with your family or your spouse over your phone use, maybe you write the plan out and let them look at it and hold you accountable to it. Sometimes that scares us. And maybe it's just setting goals when it comes to the use of phone. Maybe you say, hey, there's certain times a day where I'm just not going to use it. It might be saying no devices at our dinner table. Maybe it's at 9 o'clock at night. Put it on airplane mode so you can use it as your alarm, but you're not going to get any more data for the rest of the day. Or maybe when you're going out with dinner with friends, you just leave it in your car. Maybe maybe it includes not bringing your phone or tablet to bed, shutting off the blue light devices so that you can get a good night's sleep. Maybe it's replacing the time that you would spend on your phone because you're bored with healthy activities. When you're bored, don't turn to a device. Maybe something else. Maybe read, go for a walk, hang out with friends. I know I can get caught up in the boredom at times when I'm just kind of sitting around, and I can find myself attracted to the distraction of my device. Maybe it's limiting the number of checks per hour. Maybe you say, I'm only going to check my phone once every 30 minutes, no matter how many times it bings. Or 15 minutes or 30 seconds, whatever it takes. This is about creating rhythm in your day. We need to create rhythm in our day where we are absent from distraction. Absent from distraction. I don't play the piano, but if I was to go over and just pound on it constantly, all you would say is it was what? Noise. Why is it noise? Because there's no rests in the music. And great music has moments of rest. This is what life will feel like great music. When we build these moments of rest and shut down these moments in our day. But it's got to be intentional. It requires a plan. Now, let me close by saying, some of you are sitting here and say, not a problem with me. I don't use my device. I don't own a device. But there are other things, right, that can distract you, that can keep you from solitude. Let's be honest. If it's not your device, it can be something else. Worry, anxiety. I mean, that's Martha, right? She was worried and upset about so many things. Maybe it's the challenges and difficulties that are distracting you. Maybe it's something good that's keeping you experiencing the best. So maybe that's you, but maybe you're like me and you have a problem. And you've struggled with this talk and you feel shamed. I know I did. I put it together and guilty about my device use. You're not alone. Many of us are in this together. It's just about admitting and being willing to slowly tackle the issue. You cannot go cold turkey. It just doesn't work. Because if you go cold turkey, you minimize the benefits. There are benefits. It takes time. You start slow. Maybe it's a few minutes of solitude in a day, an initial plan. For me, I've surrendered. I have surrendered by my struggle to the Holy Spirit. Because I know that in myself, I'm not going to do this by myself. I need a power greater than myself that will help me to deal with this. And I know I've got to start slow. I need an initial plan. I need to focus more on my priorities. God is gracious. He knows your heart. And God is not asking for perfection. God is just asking for progress. Small steps, one at a time, to break free from the devices we hold and the hold that they have on us. I hope some of you are willing to join me on this journey to be less distracted, but not just giving up on the distractions, but also finding our way to solitude in greater and greater amounts, because that's where life is lived, that's where God does his best work, and that's where you'll sense his presence most. Are you with me? Let's pray together. And so, Father, I just praise you and thank you. Lord, I'm so guilty of these things so much. And Lord, I know in the last few months I've tried to be better and still a long way to go. And I think others where I am. I think there's lots of things that can distract us. This is just one of those things. And for those who aren't distracted by devices but something else, may they also deal with the distractions. My greatest hope and prayer, Lord, as you know this morning, is that all of us would find a little bit more space in our day for solitude, and a little bit more space in our day to spend time alone with you. Because with you, we find life. We know your presence and your power. We feel your gentle hands of compassion and care on us. More and more, may we find our ways to little moments of solitude, maybe one big moment and little moments of solitude through our day, so that we can be still and know that you are God. In your name we pray.